we'll just let people trickle in if they want to. I'm Anne Bryan from Downstairs in 103 in Student Affairs. And Will Jackson and Matt and some others in the GSA asked me to come and talk briefly about graduate student milestones, paperwork, answer questions, things like that. So I'm just going to talk about the major milestones and then I'll open it up for questions. We have Shelby's our MA student, so I'll talk just briefly about proceeding beyond and what that means in case you have other friends who could not make it that you're going to talk to after this is over. So I'll start just briefly with orientation. Was everybody at orientation this year? Anybody not there? Okay. So the way that the programs work now is that as soon as students are admitted, the program faculty assign advisors to new students across all the programs. And that might be a temporary advisor, or it could be the person that you end up with all the way through until you graduate. But everybody should have an advisor at this minute. Is there anybody that does not have one? Okay, perfect, very good. So milestone number 1 is advisor assignment, and like I said, everybody should have one. As you get into your coursework and as you, particularly as you're ready to start writing your either master's thesis or your doctoral dissertation, it's possible that your committee might change a little bit, and we'll talk about that later, and your advisor might change. But right now, everybody should have someone that is helping them choose their courses. So since we have a lot of first-year students here, it's likely that you all are in some of the same courses. I know that we've just talked about Stat 1, which is a popular course for first-year students. Right now, in the current strands, we still have the strand area seminars, which everybody should be in. In the new system, which will start with next fall, we're going to have some changes in required coursework, but some things will probably remain the same, even if they're called something new. There probably will be a strand area seminar. There probably will be an introductory methods course. Stat 1 is likely to still be offered, etc. So after you take your coursework, after you are in your coursework, it used to happen at the end of the first year. For some students, it's happening a little bit later now as program of studies committees get formed. But by the end of your second year, you should have what's called a program of studies meeting with your advisor and your program of studies committee to negotiate the courses that you're going to take as a part of your degree. And I'll pass around these copies. This is what the current PhD in Ed program of studies looks like. And you'll see on the front page is just sort of a checklist of things, and I'm going to share with you. But if you flip over to the second page, you'll see the core courses that are offered, the research methods courses. I don't have any more. Can we share if we don't have enough? These forms are all downstairs in 103. So if you don't have one, don't worry. I can email you one, or you can come down to my office and pick one up. So the way that it's set up is core courses on the top, research methods, and then the second page are your courses outside of the School of Ed and your concentration courses. This is going to look really different for everyone, even in the PhD in Ed, and I know we have one EDD student here. I don't have one for curriculum instruction, but there is one that I can get to you. So these are going to look a little bit different for everybody based on what you're making as your claims of knowledge, but your coursework and your claims of knowledge should be integrated. So if you're going to make a claim about teacher education, some of your coursework should reflect that, and so on for whatever your claims might be. You can see right now for current students, we require 2 courses outside of the School of Education. I think in the new PhD, and then we're going to require that as well. But we don't have a new program of studies for the new concentration areas right this minute. I know that the Faculty Executive Council and Deb Anchorage have been working on that, and my sense is that that'll be out sooner rather than later. And I'll talk in just a minute about people who are in the current strands who might be transferring. But for purposes of negotiating with your program of studies committee, this is the paperwork that you would take with you to your program of studies meeting. And you would list all the courses that you plan on taking, the ones that you've already taken and the ones that you plan to take. And this is sort of the negotiated contract between you and your committee about what you're going to have your course of study be in preparation for comps. For those of you who have taken coursework at another institution, it's possible that you might have courses that your committee will allow you to transfer into your program of studies. And let me pass around the transfer credit form, and again, if I don't have enough, just go ahead and share these. But I just want you to take a look at this so you know what it looks like. If your committee says that it's okay, you can transfer in for doctoral students. The School of Ed allows up to 20% of your courses to be taken somewhere else. So if you did doctoral level coursework or master's coursework that is pertinent to what your claims of knowledge are, you can do one of these forms and transfer credit in that you can then list on your program of studies. So let's just say that Allison took a course at NC State as a part of her master's work that's really relevant to what she's going to make as her claims here, and she negotiates with her committee to transfer that in. You would do one of these forms, attach a transcript if we don't already have it, and submit it to us, and then we'll get it processed. The courses for transfer cannot be more than 5 years old, and if they were graded on the traditional ABCD scale, you have to have earned a B or better in the course for it to transfer. If the course is graded on the graduate level grading scale, a P or better to transfer. And again, all of this is negotiated with your committee. Some students will finish their program and won't have transferred any courses in. They'll only take courses here at UNC. That's perfectly okay. Other students might have some that they want to transfer in. And if you do, I would encourage you to go ahead and start talking to your committee about that now, particularly those of you that are first-year students, because that will be good for planning purposes as you sit down with your committee to do your program of study. Any questions at this point about program of study or transferring in credit? Does anybody have transfer credit that they're thinking of transferring in that they want to use? You do?
I would like to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yes. So talk to your advisor now, because we don't want you to repeat and pay for courses that you may have had that you can use from elsewhere. And in fact, there could be another course, if you're allowed to transfer that course in, that you would then have time to take here as a part of your program of study.
Can you talk a little bit more about claims of knowledge?
Yes. Yes, I will. Any other questions about transfer credit or program of study?
What about if I got this courses in China? It's like, can I transfer it here?
If your committee says it's okay, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So the coursework that you're taking is built around your claims of knowledge. And the claims of knowledge are the things that your coursework is going to inform and that you're going to claim on your comps as being your areas. So let's say that one of your areas is teacher education and one of your areas is bilingual learners, ELL students, and one of your claims is immigration. Your coursework is going to be set up to inform those claims so that when you're ready for comps, those claims and your coursework is what you're going to be tested on. And comps is sort of the next milestone after you've had your program of studies committee meeting and your committee has agreed to your coursework and you are finished with coursework or you are in your last semester of courses, you would be ready to take comps. So the way the comps process was redesigned back in 2007 is detailed in this handout. And let me pass these out so we can talk about these. So again, your claims of knowledge are negotiated with your committee, coursework informing those, and you have an initial meeting with your program of studies committee because they're going to be your comps committee. So we haven't gotten to the point of master's thesis committee or dissertation committee at this point. We're just talking about your committee that's going to see you through comps, which is going to include your advisor and at the doctoral level, 3 other people. At the master's level, your advisor and 2 other people normally. So your areas of expertise are going to be sort of proven by your coursework. You have your initial meeting with your program of studies committee where you lay them out and you prepare your reading list and you sort of your initial meeting about when you're going to do comps, your timeline, that sort of thing. Oftentimes students have a second meeting where this form on the back page gets filled out and signed, where you actually articulate what your claims are, your committee signs off on it. Here you go, you can have that one. And you sign a date of when you're going to start your writing. If you want your comps graded in the term in which you take them, so let's just say that what's your name? Daphne was gonna take her comps this semester. She would need to start writing by about mid-September so that she can get her 6 weeks of writing and her faculty have their 5 weeks of grading so that she would have an outcome on her comps before the end of the semester. It's not a requirement, but just know that if you go over into the next semester, that could have an effect on your timeline. So if you're planning on defending your dissertation proposal or your master's proposal, let's say in January, and you have started later than the timeline allows, you might have to adjust your timeline on the back end for when you might move on to your next milestone, because you will have to have your comps graded before you could do, let's say, dissertation proposal defense. Does that make sense? So, Program of Studies Committee becomes Comps Committee. You'll be given your questions, and I'm not gonna go into too much detail about the specifics of comps because it's laid out on the front page of this form. But you will make your claims, you and your committee will decide what you're gonna write on, and then you will be given the questions and write starting on the date that you indicate on your form here. This form will get turned into us downstairs in 103, and we'll keep track of this while you're writing so that we know when it's time for you to turn your answers in. Any questions so far about the comps process? Yes?
When ideally are you supposed to have your committee meeting to figure out your coursework and
Your Program of Studies
Yes.
Committee meeting?
Yes, when is that supposed to happen?
It used to be that everybody would do it at the end of the first year. I think more and more students are doing it now, actually at the beginning of the second year. Some students are enrolled for a number of semesters before they have their Program of Studies Committee meeting. I would suggest to you earlier is better, so that if, for instance, you are planning on taking courses that your committee knows are gonna be eliminated or are not gonna be offered every term, but maybe every other term or only on demand, that you have plenty of time to plan for that. What you don't wanna have happen is be counting on courses in a particular given semester and only learn that they're not gonna be offered for 2 more years. Right now, we're in a situation where we will be, for the next year or two, offering courses in the current PhD strands as well as the new strands, so that is gonna probably have an effect not only on availability of PhD courses in the PhD in Ed, but some of the other courses, perhaps in Ed Leadership and Curriculum Instruction as well. So I would say it's never too soon for you to talk to your advisor about scheduling a Program of Studies Committee meeting. And even if they say, you've got plenty of time, let's wait until next year, at least have it in your mind that you're ready to sort of start putting your courses down on paper and see where you need to fill in the gaps. Yeah. Any other questions about Program of Studies meeting?
How do you go about changing your program of studies if a course is not offered when you expect it to be?
Right, that's a great question, and some of you may encounter that in this changeover. So let's just say that Daphne has had her Program of Studies meeting, everybody has signed off on her Program of Studies, and then she gets to fall of 2013 and a class is canceled. What normally happens is that Daphne and her advisor would meet, they would talk about the course that was canceled, and they would brainstorm what would be another appropriate course to fill in that gap. It could be a course that we have here at UNC, it could be a course at Duke or NC State or UNCG, and that's fine. You should let me know if you make changes to your Program of Studies, because when you're ready to graduate, that paperwork is what we use to check off that you've taken all the courses that your committee has said you were going to take. And you don't want to get an email from me 2 weeks before graduation that says, oh, you never took Education 877, you've got it on your Program of Studies, because we would hold up your graduation for that. So if your Program of Studies Committee approves a substitute course, let me know what it is, and we'll just make an addendum to your form so that we're looking for the correct course. If you have an advisor change, let's just say that your advisor retires or leaves UNC and you have to get a new advisor, it's possible that you would need to, if you're at the Program of Studies stage, reconvene your program of studies to make sure that your new advisor and everybody else is on the same page with what your courses are. A new advisor can ask for changes to the program of studies, although I would suggest to you that it doesn't happen very often. If you're making some significant changes in your claims, you might have to take some additional courses, but I can only think of 1 or 2 instances that that's happened since I've been here. Once it's set, it's pretty much set, unless you have to substitute a course in. Yes, ma'am?
Do people take, I just want to get a timeline on like when to take comps. You said during your last semester of class or after?
You have to either have completed your coursework or be in your last semester of coursework to be eligible to take comps.
Okay. Do people often do it at the same time that they're taking classes? I mean, the last semester?
People are often taking one class while they're preparing for comps. Students do not normally take 9 hours and try to do comps and work an assistantship in the same term.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes?
Typically, how many claims of knowledge would there be?
I think 3 is a common number. Matt, Will?
Less is better.
I think 3 is
3 is common.
fairly common.
That's what I see a lot.
But I guess you can also, you can have 3 claims of knowledge, but that doesn't mean you'll have 3 comp questions.
Right.
You could have 2 comps questions that encompass all of those claims. You could have 4 claims of knowledge and 2 comps questions that encompass all of those.
Right.
It just depends on what your committee decides, and committees decide differently.
It varies a little by area too. So you might talk to your advisor and see what the norm is in your area, but 3 is a common number.
You can't have less than 2.
Right.
You already said that.
You have to have a minimum of 2 claims of knowledge, right?
That's on the program of studies form. There's a space for 2 concentration areas. Am I correct?
Mhm.
People have it. So, yeah.
Though again, it depends. I mean, you may have something that's really broad that encompasses most of your courses. Some areas have different, what's the word I'm looking for? Different sort of foundational things. But that would be negotiated when you do your program of studies. That would be negotiated with your committee. Yep. Are you already sort of in your mind thinking?
I always like to know what I'm working toward
Okay.
from the beginning.
Okay.
So I'd like
Mhm.
to have an idea of what the end is gonna be about.
Do you have a sense of your research topic already?
Autism,
Okay.
secondary level,
Okay.
but I'm not fixed on whether it's social, academic,
Right.
you know, exactly,
Right.
but.
From a student experience, very often when you have your meeting with your committee, they will help you flesh out what your claims are and then what classes and things you need to do in order to get there. So you might have an idea of what you want to go into, where you want to end up, what you want to study, and they'll help piece together, well, if you're going to do this, you need to do this, and that will be an area, and you need to do this, and that will be an area.
Okay.
So,
And I would add maybe 2 things. First thing is, probably depending on your area, like in my area, it's probably best for you to talk to your advisor pre-comps meeting. So you don't go into the meeting kind of like, oh, I don't quite know what I'm doing, because then you have like 4 people trying to decide, and it can very quickly go somewhere where you don't want it to go.
yes.
And then the second thing I think is just that, you know, like the more comps questions you have, the more you're trying to address that through your coursework. So that's kind of one thing to consider. Like, you know, if you have 5
Claims.
areas, then you got to try to cover that in your coursework, which
Right.
may or may not be possible.
Right. And what some students do is they add a minor because they're making a claim about something that we might not have courses particular to here in the school. And so they add a minor in psychology, business, something, and that's okay if you want to do that. That is also negotiated with your committee. Normally, minors are 5 courses minimum. And there's some paperwork that's associated with it. It has to be approved by your committee, by the minor department, by our director of graduate studies. So if you are thinking that your claims are gonna lead you to perhaps minoring in something, let me know. Earlier is better so that we can make sure that the paperwork is in place for you to do that. And that could end up being one of your claims is your minor area. And again, the coursework would have to sort of inform whatever that claim is. So depending on what your claims are, and even within areas within the PhD strands, I would say that many of you may end up with more courses outside of the School of Education than the 2 that are required, and that's okay too. What you cannot do is use courses in the minor to meet the School of Ed requirements, so that would be 5 additional courses on top of however many courses you're planning on taking. So that's important to keep in mind, and those courses cannot count as your 2 outside the School of Ed courses. They can either count on the program of studies, or they could count for a minor, but not both.
Does all this information apply to the EDD as well, or is there something totally different?
Yes and no. I think the new EDD and CNI, when it was created, was not exactly a part of the new PhD and Ed strands, but they follow the same policies under the graduate school for minors and claims and things like that. And my sense is that they follow the comps policy as well. That's a good question. Yes, ma'am.
So you said that courses in minor can't count towards courses in your degree, but what if the minor, it's not a minor, but it's a certificate?
I think there is some increased flexibility with certificates, but I will look, I'll check for you. Are you doing the?
I'm doing the nonprofit
Yeah.
certificate.
Yeah, I'll check on that.
Certificates can double count,
Certificates, courses can?
I believe, because certificates aren't considered a degree, and the honoring of certificates is whatever the department decides counts as the criteria for the certificate. I got a certificate with my master's, and the courses counted towards both.
They do.
Yeah. And it's up to the department, whatever. I got mine, I guess, from the FedEx International something.
Global education.
Yeah. And, you know, their requirements were set, and they accepted that, you know, these courses were counting towards a master's, and they allowed, if you had, you know, a paper from class or something else that you wanted to use with that, the requirements they had, they were fine with it.
Good to know.
So you would have to check with the certificate.
So your comps committee will have your advisor, and for doctoral students, 3 other members. Let's say that you have a former professor or a former professional colleague who is working at another institution that you want to be a part of your committee. Even at the program of studies phase or at the comps phase, you could include those people, that person. The majority of your committee has to be tenured or tenure track faculty here in the School of Education. So for the program of study and comps committee, that's going to be 4 faculty members. But if you want to nominate somebody to your committee, you can let me know. And there's a process through the graduate school that we can go through to add people. This is not as common at the program of studies or comps point, but at the point that you're ready to defend your proposal, it certainly is. You don't have to have any outside people on your committee. You can have all 5 people be from the School of Education if you wish, or you can have outside people. So dissertation committees are 5 faculty members. 3 out of the 5 must have regular graduate faculty appointments in the school. So 2 out of your 5 could be outside people if you wanted. And if you're thinking that that's going to be something that you're going to be doing, let me know, because we'll need the CV of whoever it is we would nominate. And for Shelby, that would be a 3-person committee on your master's, and we could nominate 1 person if you wanted somebody from outside. You mentioned that you're thinking of doing autism, very popular for the people from speech and hearing sciences and public health, to be nominated for a committee like that, because we just don't have a lot of autism specialists here in the building. So depending on your area, this may affect you or may not, but there is a way to get it accomplished if we need to. Some of you, how many of you are in EPME? I can't remember. One, Will, two, there are 2 of you in EPME, that's it? So EPME requires also that your chair of your committee be an EPME person. Some of the other areas have more flexibility in that. And it used to be that EPME required 3 out of the 5 committee members be in EPME. They've broadened that to now human development and psych studies. I'm not sure what they're going to do in the new program, but if you're in EPME, you know, that might affect you. They just tend to require a little bit different kind of setup. But otherwise, and curriculum instruction has lots of flexibility as well. Any questions about committees? So once you have written your comps and passed your comps, the next thing that you would do, the next milestone, is that you would form your dissertation committee. And let me back up one bit and talk about grading of comps. So once you've written your comps, your comps committee has 5 weeks to grade what you've written. And the grading options that UNC allows is pass or fail. It is possible that once you have finished writing your comps, that the decision is not made on your comps because they want you to make some revisions or what some committees call rewrites. That happens all the time. That's not an unusual procedure for students in the School of Education. So if you're asked to write rewrites, don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. When we moved to the new comps policy and it was decided that one of the comps answers was designed to be a publication, which I think is detailed on this front page here, many of the committees went to rewriting because they wanted it to be something that could be published. And I think that there's still, among many committees, is that kind of interest. But officially on the doctoral exam report, and let me pass out one of those right now so that you can take a look at what this looks like. On the doctoral exam report, the only options for grading are passing and failing. So if you have to rewrite, just know that a decision will not be entered on your comps until the rewrites are turned in. And for more information on all that grading procedure, you can look at the PhD in Ed handbook that's on the website, and the CNI handbook would be similar to that. If you pass your comps, your written comps, your committee will fill this section 1, this part 1 out of your preliminary written exams. If you pass, they'll put down a pass for this and they'll turn it into our office for holding. When you're ready to do your oral defense of your comps, which would be the next thing that happens after you have passed your written comps, you will convene your committee. You will be available to them. They'll ask you questions about what you've written. They may ask you to make a brief presentation, and they will make a decision on your passing your oral comps. The decision on that will also get registered on this form, and they will turn the form back into us in 103, which will hold until you're ready for your final defense. Should you fail your written comps or your oral comps, that will also be notated on this form and get turned into us. Should you fail, you are allowed a second attempt at writing or at an oral defense, but you do have to wait 3 months before you can attempt again. And the reason that you have to wait 3 months is that the graduate school really wants you to have time with your committee and your advisor to prepare again, either for writing or for an oral defense. So if that should happen, you're not out of the program, you do get another try, but you'll have to wait. And so as you're sort of thinking of your timeline, that could have an effect on your timeline as well.
How many rewrites? Do you only get one rewrite, or could you have multiple rewrites?
One attempt at rewrites,
Mhm.
you get one attempt at rewrites, and then they register a decision, yes.
When you, if you fail, can you write on the same question?
depends on the area. So some areas have, I think, what they would call foundational things. So let's just say, let's pick on ETME for a minute. ETME might say, foundational areas in our program that everybody has to pass off on are human development, learning, and give me another one. Measurement. And so for ETME, you might be asked to write on those three things because those are foundational to that area. It might not be the exact same question, or it could be, and that's up to the committee.
Gotcha.
In other areas, like let's say curriculum and instruction, where there might not be foundational areas, they might give you a different set of questions, or they could give you the same one. They might say curriculum is a foundational element, and so you have to pass off on a question on curriculum. So it depends a little bit on the area. We've had it go both ways with students. Sometimes they get different questions and sometimes they don't. I would say that from the faculty perspective, if you get the same questions again, you better pass off on them the second time. Does that help?
Yeah, I hope I'm not. Yeah.
That's a good question. Okay,
I have a question.
yes.
On the credits, so before we can do the comps, we need to have completed how many credits? It says here, a maximum of 48 to 50 hours beyond the master's required, not counting dissertation.
Right, most students take, I would say, 48 credits of coursework and then 6 credits of dissertation. So they end up with, what is that, 54 credits about? Depends a little bit, again, on your claims. It depends a little bit about, again, on whether you're adding a minor or a certificate or something else. We certainly have had students who've gone way over that based on what they're doing, but I would say 54 credits is a good average.
So the comps are done in the second or the third year?
Depends on how many courses you're taking.
I mean, sorry, in the third or the fourth year? I'm just trying to add up credits here. I don't see how I could get to 48 until the third year.
I think for most people it's second or third. Like I had to take a lot of courses, and I'll have one course left to take next semester. So I'm third year. I'm taking 3 courses each semester.
Yeah.
And to get to that point to where I'll have the 50 or the 48, I needed to take one more course next semester, and I'll be taking my comps then. And I think that's pretty usual for third years in my cohort. Like there's some people that took them actually in this. That have already taken them. Like they took them at the beginning of this semester, people that came in at the same time as me because they did their masters here or whatever, so they have more coursework they can kind of contribute to that 50.
Or they could have transferred in courses. It really depends on your committee and what coursework you need to substantiate your claims of knowledge. I would say third year is a common time for students to take comps. It seems like it's the rare student that does 2 years of coursework and comps, and then third year dissertation proposal and fourth year writing, and they're out in 4 years. It seems like our students take about, on average, 4.5 years. But, I mean, it can be done. We have had students who have been in and out in 4 years, no problem, job waiting at the end. Again, claims of knowledge, it's dependent on what courses you're going to take.
At my age, I don't want to prolong this process.
I understand exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So that would be important for you to talk to your committee about,
Sure.
and that may dictate how many claims of knowledge you want to make.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, so you've passed off on comps, you finished all your coursework. The next milestone that you're gonna meet is your proposal defense. And every committee does this a little bit differently, but I would say it is not uncommon for your committee to want the first 3 chapters of your dissertation ready for your proposal defense. Not every committee is going to require that, and it's going to vary again a little bit by area, but it is not uncommon for that to be what is asked for. So when you're ready for your proposal defense, you'll have your committee meeting, and this form here will get filled out, and you will articulate who is on your committee, what the working title of your dissertation is, and when you pass your defense, they will all sign on the right-hand side, and we will send this on to the graduate school to have while you're writing. Sometimes if you're applying for external fellowships or external funding, employers and funding agencies will want to know that you have an approved dissertation proposal, or that your ABD is the other terminology that people use a lot, to see if they will fund you. So we send this in as soon as you have done it, so that if anyone calls or they need any verification of your status, the graduate school can provide this, or if they contact us, we provide it ourselves. And along with this form, IRB is very much associated. And Barbara Goldman, who was the person who has been helping School of Ed students with their IRB processes, has just recently had some change in her duties at FPG, and so she is not going to be our person. That person is going to be identified. I think there was an email from Deb about it recently, so I will let you know who is going to be helping our students as they go through the IRB process. But when you have to do it, when you have to apply, depends very much on whether you're using human subjects, and your advisor should be the person who is sort of guiding you through this process and letting you know, do you need to have an approved IRB before you even start looking at your data, running your study, or can you go ahead and be doing some things without IRB approval? If there are any questions, or if your advisor seems like they're not sure of what the process should be, let me know, because we can get in really big trouble. You can get in really big trouble if you are using human subjects before you have permission from IRB. I understand that the process has been simplified. Anybody, Matt or Will, have y'all been through IRB yet? No? Not yet, okay. I understand the process has been simplified over the last year, that they've made a lot of changes. So I hope that it's going to be a little bit more of a user-friendly process. It's a process that we in the school don't have any control over. So it's very much, especially if you're using human subjects, it's very much something that can tinker with your timeline. Because once you submit an application, we don't have any control over how fast it gets reviewed, when it gets reviewed, when you get notified if you've been approved or not. So please look to your advisor for providing the guidance on when you should think about getting your application ready if you need it.
My advisor does it. I mean, I think it's so I have co-advisor. Well, there's 2 co-investigators in our lab, and we just put in an IRB, and the one investigator says that he has the best luck, and I think his luck is about 3 weeks.
That's
which
good.
is really, really short. But I know some people, I guess in different fields, who have, waited up to like 6 months. Like,
Yes.
It's been very, very long,
So it's just something to be really aware of, particularly if you're already thinking in your mind that you're going to be doing a study using human subjects. Just as you think about timeline, think about making sure that that process is handled in a timely way, and that you're on top of it, that it's not something that gets left to the last minute. You think, oh my gosh, IRB, I haven't done my application, and you're thinking that you're going to start your study right away. 3 weeks, I think, is an excellent turnaround time, and that's a lot better than it has been over the last few years, a lot better. And that may be the best that we'll ever get. So if that's the case, I mean, just be thinking, I've got to have planned in my timeline time to get IRB approved. So once you've passed off on your dissertation proposal, that's sort of the last milestone right in a row. From that point on until you're ready to defend, you're writing, you're meeting with your advisor is reading all of the drafts that you're writing, giving feedback, trying to get you ready to defend your dissertation. The dissertation defense will The final defense will again get recorded on your doctoral exam report. And if you'll look at this form, it's got four parts. So the dissertation defense has been broken down to the presentation that you do, the oral exam, your presentation, their questions of you, and the manuscript. They get graded, if you will, separately. I will tell you that as far as the graduate school is concerned, when you get to this meeting, when you're at your dissertation defense, your dissertation should be ready. If it had to be turned in right that minute, it should be pretty much ready. You can make small changes, you can fix typos, you can make little adjustments to it, but you should not go to your final defense needing to redo your whole methodology or anything like that. Your advisor should be preparing you for a successful defense at your meeting. But just know that at that meeting, as you can see on the doctoral exam report, there are two areas that you have to pass off on, the manuscript and the defense of the manuscript. Any one of which could hold you back if it was not passing. Presuming everybody will pass though, and certainly it is the case in our department that passage rate at final defenses is very, very high. We have good advising here, I think, and advisors really prepare students for that milestone, so you shouldn't get here without being really ready. But presuming everybody passes, the doctoral exam report gets turned into us, we send it to the graduate school, and you apply to graduate, and you should earn your degree at that point. This is sort of the last big milestone. Applying to graduate is not really a milestone, but you do have to remember to do that, and if you don't, that can really mess up your timeline. But this is it. Once this form is signed off on and turned into us, you're done. That's all. You have finished, and even if you, let's just say Daphne defended yesterday and passed her dissertation, UNC only confers degrees 3 times a year, December, May, and August. So you would wait until December to graduate officially, but if you were on the job market, if you needed a letter, you know, we will write, or your advisor sometimes writes that Daphne is done, she's met all the requirements for the degree, we're just waiting on the degree to post. We unfortunately can't confer degrees in other months besides those 3. So should you defend your dissertation in May, you will wait the whole summer to graduate because we don't confer degrees except in August. So that's not usually a problem for employers as long as we can attest to the fact that you've actually finished your degree transcript. Your degree dated transcript just won't show as complete until you've actually earned the degree. But this is the last milestone that we have, and once you've made it, that's it. You guys graduate. We send you off on your way to get great jobs and be productive members of society. We hope, knock on wood. Let me just talk about a couple more. Does anybody have any questions on the final defense? It seems a long way off for first year students, I bet, but you will get there, I promise. Let me just talk about a couple more things, and then I want to have time for you guys to ask questions. So if you, let's say that you have to change advisors at some point. Your advisor retires or leaves UNC for some reason. Or your advisor doesn't leave UNC or retire, but you just feel like you're going in a little bit different direction and you need somebody else to help you. Occasionally students do change advisors, and that's certainly within your purview if you think you need that. And if you think that's going to happen, you can come and talk to me about it, or you can talk to other students in your program who are a little bit farther along about what your claims are, who they might suggest you approach, or other people on your program and studies committee or comps committee, dissertation committee, depending on where you are in the process. It's fine to do that, and I think that most of the faculty in this building would say that there are no hard feelings, but I would encourage you to just approach it delicately, because these could be people that you may end up working with down the road, or that will know you at conferences, or you might be involved with in some other way. So I wouldn't burn any bridges, even if you feel like it's just really not a good situation for you and you have to change. Approach it delicately, and if you want to talk to me privately, about some ideas for how you might do that, I'm happy to talk to you about that. We have a couple of students every year who change advisors for lots of different reasons. But because education is a small department and the field of education is a small field, I just want to make sure that you all don't burn any bridges that you might need later on down the road. At this point, since most of you all are first years and you're just in coursework, it might not be the big deal that it might be a little bit later on when you're a little bit farther along. So just know that it's possible if you need to. Proceed Beyonds shall be left, and I don't think we have any other MA students here, but I'll just say this for the good of the cause for the people who might be watching this later. For MA students that are admitted to UNC that earn their MA and then they want to proceed beyond, and that was a case of a person who did this, that is possible. It does require, once you earn the MA, a new personal statement and a recommendation from a faculty member in your program, basically agreeing to allow you to go on to the doctoral program. And we have a couple of students every year who do that. There may be some students in your program right now who have done that earned their master's here, like Will said, and maybe they're using some of that coursework on their program of studies. If you should encounter prospective students who are interested in doing that and might want to start at the MA level, it's possible. Proceeding beyond, though, does have to happen immediately when you earn the MA degree. So it's not the case that Daphne could earn her MA this May and then in 2 years decide to come back and proceed beyond. It has to happen the very next term of entry. So not particularly appropriate now that Shelby's gone, but that is possible. Also, and I think this will be my last comment and then we'll have time for questions. It is also possible that when you are writing your dissertation that you will be on the job market looking for faculty jobs, policy jobs, whatever kind of job you think might be a good fit for you. I would encourage you to have your dissertation as far along as possible when you're doing that. And realizing, of course, that people take jobs and leave and then still have probably a whole year of writing to do and coming back to defend. It's hard to finish from afar. So if that happens to you, please talk to your advisor in detail about a really specific timeline for what marks you'll hit and when. Because if Allison takes a faculty job and she's teaching 4 courses a year and trying to finish her dissertation and analyze her data and write it and have office hours and a family life and whatever else might be out there, it's just really hard to do. So make sure that you have the support of your advisor and your committee should that happen. Obviously, we want everybody out there on the job market getting jobs, and so timelines being what they are, sometimes these things don't line up exactly right, so you do have to leave and finish while you're working. But it can be a stumbling block for some people, particularly for people that struggle a little bit with writing. So if that's the case for you, just be careful, but it can be done. All right, questions? Milestones we didn't cover? Will, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I mean, no, you didn't miss anything. When you were talking about switching advisors, since I had switched advisors, I was just going to mention that sometimes your advisor might tell you that you need a new advisor. And that might not be like, it wasn't, in my case, it wasn't like because my advisor hated me or anything. I thought I was incompetent, but it was just the fact that she was not in my direct field of interest. So I'm very interested in self-regulated learning. And there's 2 parts to self-regulated learning. There's a very cognitive side of it, and there's a very motivation side of it, or motivation affect type side. And because my advisor was more on motivation and I was more interested in the cognitive aspect, then I switched advisors. And she, was kind of like, I think you really should consider switching advisors to such and such because he's probably a better fit for you, what I mean? So sometimes that conversation may come to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, for first years, as I mentioned when we started, it could be that you have sort of a temporary advisor right now, somebody that's kind of getting you off the ground, but that might not be, as Will said, in your particular area. And it's not uncommon for students as they get into their coursework, to tweak their area or maybe go in a little bit different direction, and then you realize that the person that was assigned to you when you were admitted might not be in your exact area, or they maybe not in the area that you decide to go in at all. And so advisors can change. It can be student directed, it can be advisor directed, and that's not usually a problem. We can pretty much cover most areas in the building, and if not, your temporary advisor or who you have right now can help you identify a person on campus that can be a great help to you, even if they're in another department. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
When we transition to the new 5-strand model, are there still going to be the strand-specific seminars? And if you switch to a different strand, do you have to take another seminar?
I think the
You know the answer to that question.
GURP is going to be talking about that at their next meeting. I actually mentioned that to Deb yesterday, and I said, you know, it would be good to know about that coming to this meeting, because I anticipate that we're going to have questions about that. And I think they haven't decided, but they're in the midst of course scheduling right now for the next 3 years, and so I think that's going to come up, because a lot of people are in the seminar now, and if they change, I'm not sure they necessarily want to take another program-specific seminar, but I think the final decision hasn't been determined. I've asked for some clarity around that by January, because I think that program faculty want students to make switches by January, so that when the application cycle deadline comes for fall of 2013, program area faculty admissions committees know how many people are going to switch, because that's going to affect how many new applicants they take into the program. So I think that information is coming. And maybe I'll ask her to send out an email to the doc list about it. That's a good question. What other questions? It's been my experience after doing these for a couple of years that somebody will leave here and realize that they have a situation that I haven't described today, or you'll want to talk in more specifics confidentially about something related to your situation. That's not a problem. I'm in the office every day from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, so stop by my office. You don't need an appointment. And give me the particulars of your situation. If there's something unusual or something that you think that comes to you later that we've talked about today that might be specific just to you that you don't want anyone else to know about, that's perfectly fine. My phone number and email are on the School of Ed website. My direct line phone number is on there with confidential voicemail, so you can leave me something in confidence if you want to talk to me about it later or privately. That's not a problem at all. And if you talk to other students who were not here today and they have questions, urge them to come and talk to me also. I'm happy to sort of do this individually for people that you know that were in class or working. All right, final comments from the Brown Bag Chair?
Thanks everybody for coming. I really appreciate the turnout. Oh, I do have a question for you guys. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any, and I'm assuming that maybe some of you have already been asked this before, but if you haven't, just humor me, or if you have, just humor me. Are there any aspects or issues or concerns that you would like the Brown Bags to kind of address through the year? We have probably about 6 or 7 slots of different things that we can do. So I'm just wondering, are there any things that you would like to be done during the Brown Bags?
We get lots of great emails from Anne about like research and funding opportunities, but it's not always clear from the email. So something about campus-wide money.
We've talked about that.
Not just assistantships, but there's like outside.
We talked about that.
That's always a common one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
No, it's good.
And I've talked to Brian at the Graduate Student Center about some ideas maybe for a panel, because I think the tricky thing is we get students that are interested in 2 different things. So we have students that are interested in funding, so they're wanting assistantships. And then we have students who are a little bit farther along and they're doing their dissertation and they want funding to do their dissertation research, particularly if they're doing a study or collecting data in another state or in another country. And so it's not always the same person who can talk about both of those things. So one idea that I had talked to him about just last week was having a panel of people maybe come from the Grant Source Library is now called something different, which I can't think of what it's called right off the top of my head, but maybe putting together a panel that can talk about assistantship funding, dissertation funding, and what's increasingly becoming talked about, external competitive funding. So that's a great idea.
I went to one of the funding workshops.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and it was helpful, like, especially in helping us navigate the different, like, databases online or whatever.
Oh, good.
So I don't know if you've been to that, but it was really helpful.
No, yeah, I was asking more about what you said would be down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did
Yeah.
all of that.
I'm trying to figure it out, but I will look for the next one.
Okay.
So yeah, we're working on a couple things for either November or December regarding a panel. We're also attempting to get the process of getting a centralized location where all sort of School of Ed assistantships can be found when they become available. Because right now the only way we have to distribute those is the listserv, which some people get regularly, some people check it, some people don't. So we're trying to organize that a little bit better so students can have easier access to all the different resources and all the different announcements.
Other ideas, thoughts for brown bags that you think would be important or particularly pertinent for graduate students?
I just had an idea. I had no idea where it went.
Well,
Alright.
if you think of things, Will is our Graduate Student Association brown bag person. Pass them along to him.
He
And,
organizes all of them.
If we need to, we can connect with other departments on campus or people at the graduate
Mhm.
school for potential speakers or panel members.
All right.
Is that it?
Thanks again.
All right.
Thanks, everybody, for coming
Everybody,
out.
let me know if you have
That was
questions
it.
privately.
Did y'all see the flyers?
I've heard
About
people
the
saw the
happy hour?
flyers
For happy hour?
for this.
No, for the
this.
brown bag.
Yeah.
No, didn't see the flyers. Some people did.
So there are two ways that we're trying to advertise things. One is in the Peabody Pulse. Another one is through flyers. If you guys have suggestions about advertising and getting the word out, let us know. So any feedback, all feedback is helpful. So, all right. Thank you.
Very good.